first is the awareness. Like most people don't know that prospects fit into two categories, and they have this illusion that a traditional customer journey requires a lead capture with a nurture and then a sales conversation. Now, again, does that work for certain people? Yes. Are they your best clients? No. So then how does the conversation change? And what's true for me? So I'll give you a real life example, Gene. I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw the killer ad. This dude had a great video. He didn't even speak English very well, but he had this great video that talked about something to do with productivity. And you know, like us, we're always looking for ways to hack our productivity. And the moment I saw the ad, because he nailed the ad and the languaging so well, I said to myself mentally in my mind, that if this thing costs $2,000 or less, I'm going to buy it no matter what it is. I don't care because I think it's going to be a great thing. So I saw this ad. I'm like, boom, I'm in. I'm going to guess it's going to cost $500 for this thing that he's selling. I see the ad. I click on the button to go to the next page. And guess what happens? He invites me to a webinar. And my mind immediately went to the F you, I'm not interested. You just lost the client perspective. Why? Because he bought into the myth that all leads need to be nurtured before they make a transactional decision.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today, we're going to look at marketing myths and marketing strategies that will really help you accelerate your company, your growth strategies, and really help you make marketing actually work for you. A lot of people have complained to me because of the position I'm in and a lot of companies I work with, and they ask me, why doesn't marketing work for them? And I felt the same way many times. I've spent a lot of money off agencies and it wasn't working the way I want it to. Maybe it's because my audience buys a little bit differently than what most people do. Most of my audience members, see if I'm right here, but they're CEOs of companies that are growing. They care about leadership. They care about their people, and they buy differently than someone who might be, a middle manager inside of a business that wants to be a better leader. So when you think about that with your business, today we look at marketing myths. We look at the marketing strategies to really help you map out your growth strategies for this next year. We do this with a good friend of mine, Nicholas Kusmich. It is a mouthful, but we unpack marketing myths so that you really understand some of the things that are getting in the way of your success in marketing, but also a path forward, like what you could be doing if you want to break that pattern of finding buyers. If you really want buyers for your work and you want to have sales conversations with people, it's probably a different approach than what you're used to. And so I'll let Nicholas unpack that for you today. My hope is that you want to continue to grow your business, that you want to be a better leader. I'm Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. We do leadership development, but what we really do is help companies find the kind of alignment that allows them to not only drive forward with predictable growth, but also overcome some challenges that the brand may be going through because things change. And we only work with Inc. 5000 companies because the dynamic nature of them and the driven nature of these companies, we're just really uniquely set up to serve them. And if that's you, we'd love to chat with you about what are the challenges specifically. All you have to do is go to genehammett.com and schedule your call today. It's absolutely free, but I really would love to talk to you about specifically what's going on so that we can zero in what's getting in the way and actually put a plan together to move forward. Now, here's the interview with Nicholas. Nicholas, how are you?
Gene, I'm excited to have this conversation. It's been a while, so I'm excited to catch up.
We've known each other probably 8 or 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, goes back a while.
I remember you speaking at Traffic and Conversion, and I'd never seen you really speak before. And I'm like, holy shit, this guy just laid it out there in a unique way, the storytelling, your knowledge, and a little bit of controversy. I thought you did an incredible job on every time I've seen you on stage, because I've seen you a few times since then.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I think like in my past life, before doing what I do now, I was a pastor for 14 years. And so although that is a past life and something I don't think about all that often, if anything, it's a great training ground to sharpen your ability to get in front of an audience and to communicate to them. Because it's one thing to be like, to be able to go into a city, do a gig, go into the next city, do another gig, like, and have the same kind of program for a year. When you're going in front of the same audience every single Sunday, 52 weeks out of a year, clear. And each of those have to be different and just as good as the previous Sunday. Otherwise, people start bitching and complaining at you. If anything, it was a great training ground for trying to learn how to communicate with people who are demanding of you, and their consequences if you don't deliver. So it's been a fun trip there.
So that's all the niceties to kind of frame in you. And here's how I would position, this is really for the audience, not for you, but like if you want to understand marketing in a new world, and especially marketing where you're selling by conversations, not by clicks, I think of you as one of the top in the game. I wouldn't even know who I would put in the mix with you. I'm sure you've got some people that you would probably name on that, but I really respect the experience you've had, because I know you've worked with some big names. I don't even know if you can share some of the big names you work with. It's not important, but you also, what I really like about you, which is compared to most people who do what you do, you're not afraid to track results. You're not afraid to track ROAS. You're not afraid to track ROI.
We're required to. Yeah.
Well,
on that note, Gene, can I just tell you, I had this great conversation with someone who runs a marketing agency, and they're like, yeah, our clients are like big banks and stuff like that. I'm like, cool. Like, what do you do? And they're like, they charge obscene amounts of money, and all the bank cares is how many people saw our ad. I'm like, damn, I'm in the wrong space. My clients ask me, if I spent $1 today, how much did I make 4 minutes later? And these banks are just like, how many people saw our ad? Oh, that many? Great. Here's more money. Keep doing that. I'm like, I should have gone that route back in the day. But yeah, everything we do is required by performance. So we do have to track all the important metrics that are important to our clients.
And I'm happy to take this wherever you go, but I know that you've been putting out content lately about the effectiveness of some funnels. And I know you don't even like the word funnel. So let's just give you the chance to kind of like, what do you think is not working today that used to work?
Well, here's what I would kind of sum it up as. I think there is a myth, and I don't know who started the concept of the funnel. And look, I'm not saying anything's wrong with the funnel, but there's this idea that someone presented out way back into the marketplace that there's a customer journey, and the customer journey usually starts with some form of lead generation, and then after you've generated that lead, there's some form of lead nurturing that needs to happen, and after you've nurtured that lead, there's some form of sales conversation that needs to happen. So let me be the first to say, does that work? A loud, resounding yes, it does. You capture a lead, you nurture a lead over time in a sales pipeline or a process, and then you have a sales conversation that hopefully moves them over the edge, off the fence, and into engaging with you. But all that to say, particularly on the interwebs, which is where a lot of these quote unquote funnels happen, I recognize that there was a truth that I personally don't fit into that category. If I see an opt-in page to opt in for something, if someone says, go buy my book, if someone says opt into this challenge or this funnel or this white paper or whatever they're putting out there, I say absolutely not, because I categorize myself into a different category of prospect versus where the majority of people categorize themselves. And here's where the foundation lays, Gene. It's understanding that every prospect you put out there, and I'm just going to use simple terms that we might use on the internet, but there are certain folks that I would call an information seeker, and there are certain folks that I would call a solution seeker. Now, let's just go over the very basics of who those are. And then, Gene, just please interrupt at any time to kind of go delve deeper if we need to. But an information seeker is just that, someone who perpetually seeks information with very little intention to even take any action on the information, not to mention transact with the person on the other end of that information. So these are people who generally will opt in for this process, that process. They go from funnel to funnel to funnel, saying more information, more information, more information. They perpetuate a syndrome that I call infobesity, right? It's too much information collection with not enough implementation. And they're obsessed with what I call just in case information. So it's this idea that one day I might need to know this. So why don't I try to learn it now so that when the one day comes around, I'll be better equipped. And frankly, that's not good use of time or anything. Now, the problem with the information seeker as well is they have more time than they do money, which is why they're not actually looking to transact. They're looking to just gather information. And then the role of the business person or the marketer is, how do I convince them now to transact with me to take an action on this? Now, the other side of it is someone like me who's a solution seeker, who I wait till the very last moment in a crisis before I ever take an action. And in the midst of that crisis, I don't care what you're going to charge me, Gene, for the solution. I will pay top dollar for a quick solution as long as you promise not to try to dazzle me with your fancy marketing shenanigans. I don't need a webinar. I don't need the book to read. I don't need the event to attend. I don't have time for that. I've got a family and I've got my business and I've got my friends, and anything outside of that context is a zero issue to me. I have no time for it. And so as a result, I started to recognize that this was a behavior that was true to me. If I had a solution, I wouldn't opt in for something. I wouldn't read a book to try to figure out how can I solve this myself. I would go straight to the top person in the industry who could solve that problem. I'd get on the phone with them, say, this is my problem. Can you solve it? If it is yes, great. How do you mitigate the risk and how do we move forward? If it's no, I'm moving on to the next person. So we could delve very deep into that. But what I tend to see here is that 99% of most marketing solutions that businesses are doing are tailoring to the information seeker, and that's it. How do I know that? Because the promise of the opt-in or the starting of the marketing process is generally something that says, let me show you how to do something. And the moment you lead with, let me show you how to do something, you're attracting someone who's not looking for a solution. You're attracting someone who's looking for more information where they're trying to figure out how to do it themselves. And as a result of that, they're not going to invest into your coaching or your consulting or your agency or whatever it is that you want them to invest into, because that's not what they're looking for. Now you have to rely on the dark arts of manipulation and influence to try to convince them that you're the right person to take that action. There's just too many people in every industry who are like me, who are a solution seeker, and unfortunately they're being ignored. And it's the greatest opportunity and the easiest way to start filling up a client roster for you by targeting on those folks rather than trying to play the information seeker game with another new funnel or a new mousetrap.
I can relate to this specifically because my business has struggled in this area. We do really well. We're making an impact. We're actually doing really good coaching. Really proud of the work we're doing in the team. But I've said this, people don't like to sign up. Like my ideal client, I know from the last 6 years, none of them have signed up from a free report, free PDF, free book, nothing like that. But I still get clients.
Yes.
So
you know that there's another kind of client out there for you that, especially for what you do, like you're an executive coach, like, do these people really have time to sit on webinars and to attend these weird things on the internet before they ever transact with you? And that's why probably the traditional funnel has never worked. So sorry to cut you, Gene, there, but I'm just like, it's just proof in the pudding of what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And I'll go back in time. When I first started this 12 years ago, and we were getting to know each other, I was consuming your content. I probably went to different videos you had and I watched your stuff you had on YouTube for a while there, because you did really high value stuff really quick. And I know you spent a lot of money to do it. But I was one of those people that was signing up for everything 10 years ago.
Right.
Just in case, like just really hitting that hard. I might need to know this someday. I'm going to spend 2 hours figuring it out. And I know I did buy some things around those. So, I mean, there are people that do follow that path. But 100%. At this level, most of our clients probably listening in here have clients that they're selling things to that require sales conversation. Mm-hmm. And I want to kind of start looking at the strategies. How should we be looking at this if we're going to rethink about our strategy for marketing in 2024?
I love that question. And it's just, the first is the awareness. Like, most people don't know that prospects fit into two categories, and they have this illusion that a traditional customer journey requires a lead capture with a nurture and then a sales conversation. Now, again, does that work for certain people? Yes. Are they your best clients? No. So then how does the conversation change? And what's true for me? So I'll give you a real life example, Gene. I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw the killer ad. This dude had a great video. He didn't even speak English very well, but he had this great video that talked about something to do with productivity. And like us, we're always looking for ways to hack our productivity. And the moment I saw the ad, because he nailed the ad and the languaging so well, I said to myself mentally in my mind that if this thing costs $2,000 or less, I'm going to buy it no matter what it is. I don't care, because I think it's going to be a great thing. So I saw this ad. I'm like, boom, I'm in. I'm going to guess it's going to cost like $500 for this thing that he's selling. I see the ad. I click on the button to go to the next page. And guess what happens? He invites me to a webinar. And my mind immediately went to the F you, I'm not interested. You just lost a client perspective. Why? because he bought into the myth that all leads need to be nurtured before they make a transactional decision. But here's the other side of it. The solution seeker, someone who's looking for a real solution, someone who's looking for an immediate solution, somebody who's not price averse and doesn't care what the cost is. They just want to know that their risk is being mitigated. That person in their own mind is saying, I've got a problem and I'm looking for a solution. In fact, Dean Jackson came out with this great simple framework of asking who, not how. Right? When you're looking for a solution, are you asking, how can I solve this on my own? Are you asking, who do I need to talk to solve this for me? Solution seekers are asking the question, who? So our marketing, as nuanced as this is, and as simple as this is, has to completely change the languaging of saying, Gene, I'm not going to try to teach you anything. I'm not going to give you value-based content. I'm not going to overwhelm you with things that waste your time, because your time is more important than your money. And I'm not going to do any of that. Instead, I'm going to get straight to the point, and my languaging is going to be built around, I understand you have a problem. Here's my credibility and authority as to why I can solve that problem for you. And here's a way that I'm going to mitigate the risk for that situation. And so as a result of that, I'm just going to give you a solution and give you an opportunity for us to hop on the phone, to have a quick discussion, and to see if this is a good fit for you. And if we could do that, then we can take a sales cycle that is normally 4 to 6 months long and turn it into a 72-hour situation and then get straight to it. So that's a long, nuanced way to explain it. But the primary assumption that we need to make, we have to move away from the reality that we need to capture a lead and nurture that lead through value-based content, to simply saying, I know you've got a problem. I've got a solution. Here's how to mitigate the risk. Let's have a conversation around if we can mitigate that risk and solve that problem for you. Now, all that to say, before you ask the question, and hopefully this spawns another conversation, this is all geared around you as a business owner, your ability to do what I call category 1 positioning. If you can do that, it changes the entire game. So we could go there if you want, Gene, but I want to make sure that we're having the right understanding.
We've been talking about marketing and the myths behind that. One of the things that I'm going to urge you to think about this is to change your mindset around marketing. What I mean by your mindset is, if you think it doesn't work, then obviously most of the things you try will never really work for you. But if you change your mindset to, I need to figure out how this works for my audience, or how it works for my business, how it works for the way we want to do it, and be open to finding new ways to do this, like letting go of it can only be this way. You've learned it one way, or learned it from a friend, or learned it from watching a competitor and trying to dissect things. That may not be the best choice. You want to make sure that you have the mindset that it can work for you, because if you believe going into it that it won't work and you continue to throw money at things, you're likely going to have the same problems over and over. But when you are really keen to work with excellent people, which is the way I run my job, and Nicholas is someone I would vouch for, definitely you want to make sure you change your mindset around that. Back to Nicholas. And you've said mitigate risk like 7 times. Yes. I want to make sure that we understand that too. So I don't care what order we take these in.
Sure.
But how do you, what's the best order?
So here's let's talk about mitigating risk and why I mention it. So here's one of the greatest revelations I had about the prospect who is a solution seeker. The revelation was they are not price averse. They don't care what the price is. They're willing to pay top dollar, but they want to know that if they're going to invest into your solution, that their risk is mitigated to a certain degree. Right? Like, for example, I'm having a conversation right now with various spine surgeons all across the world because I need a big spine surgery done. Now, I don't care really the cost, and it's going to cost me anywhere from like 150 to 250 grand to do this surgery. I don't care, because it's going to change my life. I have the money to do it. No concerns. What I am concerned with, though, is post-surgery, what is my risk of coming out better than I am now versus being debilitated for the rest of my life? What do you have in place that's going to mitigate that risk? Now, if it was more of a business transaction, and let's say, Gene, I'm looking to invest in you. The question is, Gene, can you solve my problem? Yes. What is the cost? X numbers of hundreds of $1,000s. No problem. But if I'm going to invest 100 grand to work with you, Gene, how do I know that 100 grand is mitigated to a certain degree? Can you stand behind your performance to a certain degree? degree and say, hey, these are the milestones. If we don't reach them, you don't have to pay? Is it if you don't reach them, I'm not going to refund your money, but I'll continue to work with you until you reach it? Like, what are the things that you could put into place to rest assured that if I'm going to invest in working with you, that my investment is protected to a certain degree, that I know that you're going to follow through on your end of the agreement as long as I follow through on my end of the agreement? And so that could mean different things to different people, but just understand that if you're asking for a high transactional value ticket item in your transaction with somebody, you also have to present to them the opportunity that, hey, this is what we're going for. And if we don't get there, here's how you're protected as a result of that.
Makes me think about a lot of the things, because I've worked with a lot of marketing companies over the years, and they'll take anyone who has money.
Yeah, well, yeah. And then they'll get into some very shady situations. Yeah.
I know you're really dialed in to who you work with, and it makes it much easier when you do that, because you know the problems they have better than they probably know them themselves. You're able to create content that lets them connect emotionally, because I know you know how you deliver things. But then I'm going back to your framework, the credibility behind it, which we're going to talk about. But then I'm glad you unpacked the mitigate risk there, because I use some of those techniques, but I know that I could do better at it. All right, so let's go into that. How did you say it? The ability to be
to position yourself in a category of what?
Okay, yeah.
So here's the understanding that I think a lot of people don't notice. If you go into any single market, any market for that matter, the top company owns approximately 74% of all market share. That means the second company and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the sixth, all the way to the thousands that are in that category, they are all competing for 26% of market share. And so the problem with most modern day marketing and most modern day companies right now is they are positioning themselves in a comparative fashion to those who are in their marketplace. What does that mean? It means we're either better, we're faster, we're cheaper, we're more effective, we have better results. Like, the comparison list goes on and on and on and on as to what would consider, how you'd compare. And the problem with that is the moment you put your marketing or your business into a comparison kind of scenario, two things happen. One, it's a race to the bottom, because there'll always be someone who's going to be better, faster, cheaper, more effective than you anyways. And if you're comparing, the people who are doing their due diligence are going to find that company out as well, right? So that's not fun. Secondly, you're competing for 26% of market share, which is not fun either, right? So how then does marketing become exponentially easier than everything else? It's this idea of category design. It's how do you position your business or your offer, not as better, faster, cheaper, more effective, et cetera, et cetera. It's how do we position our company as different? So in the words of Sally Hogshead, different is better than better. If you are ever, a great example of this is, I don't know if you remember years and years and years ago, Pepsi Cola had their marketing campaign called the Pepsi Taste Test Challenge. Do you remember that? Where they would go out into the streets and they'd have a Pepsi and a Coca-Cola and they'd cover them and they'd say, here, stranger, come taste these two and tell us which you like better. They spent hundreds of millions of dollars on this advertising campaign. Here's what they didn't realize, that every time they ran a Pepsi Taste Test Cola Challenge, they were doing free marketing for Coca-Cola. Because every time someone went out there, they're like, here's Pepsi, here's Coca-Cola. And that was the problem. Coca-Cola could sit back that year and say, thanks, Pepsi. We're the category king in this marketplace. And we own it. And every time you mention your product, you're mentioning ours, which brings more awareness to our product. Likewise, a lot of companies out there that says we're a better funnel, we're a better this, we're a better that, we're a better executive coach, we're a better fill in the blank. Now, all of a sudden you're competing and you're being compared to, and the moment a prospect compares you to somebody else, now you go into this weird sales conversation of why you should be considered over the other person. However, if someone approaches you and you're the only person who does what you do, whether that's in actuality or in perception. So here's another key. Remember Domino's Pizza. Domino's Pizza was the first pizza company to come out with this idea of 30 minutes or it's free delivery. Now, they weren't the only pizza company. All the other pizza companies actually had that policy in place, except Domino's led with it. And so because they were the first to market by talking about it, everyone, if they're comparing, Domino's to everybody else, they're like, Domino's is different. It's not, did they have better pizza than everybody else? Absolutely not. But did they have 30 minutes or free? Everyone's like, oh, well, that's a good deal. Let's go eat Domino's today just because we're in a rush, right? So the idea is if you could create a category where you're the only player in that category, Now you have no competition. So if anybody ever comes to you and says, well, what about that company, this company, that company, who would be perceived as your competition? You're like, those don't matter to me. They do something else. We do this. So if you want this, you got to work with us. If you want all those other things, go ahead and go talk to the other companies. Now, again, we could delve forever into that conversation, but that's just kind of a preview as what we're talking about into category positioning. Because when you can marry category positioning, where you're the only person who does what you do, either in actuality or in perception, and you marry that with really good solution seeker kind of marketing, you win and you dominate. There's nobody who can even come close to what it is that you do and how you do it.
Now, Nicholas just mentioned Sally Hogshead. He doesn't know this, but Sally's been on the show before, episode number 277, Find Your Competitive Advantage. You can Google Growth Think Tank, Sally Hogshead. It's spelled as it sounds, but you can find out that interview with Sally. Nicholas has been on the show too, but I didn't mention that earlier. You can also go into Growth Think Tank and Nicholas Kusmich and find his other interview on the podcast. Back to Nicholas. I love this. Makes me think about all the things that I've learned from you and just all the parts of this. And I think I've also learned from other people as well, like even the podcast. Like, not that I'm trying to sell anything on the podcast, but I do. One of the ways I introduce it is we're the only podcast that focuses on leadership and culture of fast growth companies, because it's 98% of all of the interviews that come on here. You probably could fit into that. You live in Canada, so you didn't apply to the Inc. 5000.
Yeah, exactly. I don't qualify.
But the point is, you've got to be able to describe how you're a category of one. Where do people get tripped up on this?
Oh, the simple trip up is, again, we've been taught our whole life that we need to present ourselves as better in some way, shape, or form, right? Instead of, because it's a lot more work to position yourself as different than it is to position yourself as better. And people think, oh, it's not worth that effort. So let me give you a quick example of like how this is played out in real time for certain big companies. And then hopefully it can duel down and give you some ideas. Step one to positioning yourself as different is trying to identify or naming a problem that exists in your marketplace. So either it's an obscure problem that has an obvious solution, or it's an obvious problem with its obscure solution. But let me give you an example. So there was a company that went around, and we'll all remember this. Anybody who's watching this will most likely remember this. There was a time that existed in our society where when you wanted to watch your favorite television show, you had to do it at Thursday night at 7 p.m. And that was it, right? That was the only time you could watch a television show. So if you wanted to watch more than one episode, you can. If you wanted to watch it on Tuesday, you couldn't. And the problem that a company came around and diagnosed was what they called appointment viewing, having to watch shows at a particular time and day. And they threw out to the marketplace that, isn't that crazy that you have to wait for a certain day and time to watch your favorite television show? They called that appointment viewing. And they threw out this proposal to the world that said, what if you could watch whatever show you want, whenever you wanted, for as long as you want. In fact, you could spend all night watching an entire season if it tickled your fancy. And that was the real solution to all of your media watching kind of problems. And the companies went like, oh, great. And this company invented a problem or invented a solution that they called on-demand streaming. Now, here's an interesting point. That company didn't come out and say, hey, we're called Netflix, and we've got this really cool solution that everybody should sign up for. No. They simply said the problem is called appointment viewing, and the solution is called on-demand viewing. And because they were the company that introduced the category of on-demand streaming, they were immediately leveled up and raised into the category king of that solution. And then they become to own all the market share. And it was funny because my wife and I just recently looked up and said, I wonder how much money Netflix makes and how many members that they have. Do you have any idea, Gene, what their annual revenues are?
I have no idea.
So we just looked this up last week. Netflix, on average, I think in 2023, did $32 billion in revenue. 32 billion with a B, with over 2.4 million paying subscribers. You know how much Disney Plus did?
No.
7 billion, sorry. That's a huge discrepancy. And that's the difference between the category king and everybody else in the space. Why? Because it was Netflix who invented the problem, appointment viewing, and invented the solution, on-demand streaming. You see that with Uber, you see that with Airbnb, you see that with what I'm doing with my marketing. Like my marketing used to be, hey, I'm going to show you a better way to create a funnel to get new clients. But I was competing against every other funnel person out there in the world. Instead, now I say I'm the anti-funnel way to be able to generate more sales appointments. And I talk about the solution seeker and information seeker thing. So now if anybody comes to us, if they're coming to us, they know that they don't want a funnel and I'm not competing in that space. And if they say, I do want a funnel, I look at them and say, well, I can't help you because that's not what we do. If you want to play in that oversaturated space, I can't help you. Sorry. But if you want to play in this different space, I can. So the idea is that any company, once you can identify, we call it name, claim, you can name and claim a problem and a solution, it builds a category. And if you're the person to build the category, automatically your company rises as the top person in that category and as the only viable solution to be able to provide that for their prospects.
Such a smart way to look at this. And I see how it changes the speed at which someone is going through it. And when you're attracting that solution seeker,
yes,
in other words, a buyer,
yes, a quick buyer, yes,
it's just such a smart way to think about how to position your name out there in the marketplace.
Yep.
Now, I create the podcast because I want to add value, right?
Sure.
All of these interviews are meant to help someone understand some aspect. And I don't expect anyone to listen to every episode. In fact, if you are doing that, you're probably doing it wrong. You're not executing it the way you need to. But is there anything wrong with creating value content, or do you mix it in with this approach?
Yeah, no, I love the question. Thank you for asking. Just recognize the key is the awareness more than the execution. So if you are building a podcast or building an audience or putting value-based content out into the world, just recognize that that content is designed for the information seeker. Is that okay? 100% it's okay. And recognize that you will get clients through that and it'll take some time and that's your play. So I'm not by any means saying, hey, nobody should provide value-based content. I still throw out value-based content, but I understand the context of which I'm putting that out. That value-based content is literally put out there knowing that if any clients do come from that value-based client, that they're a lower level prospect and they're just going to happen over time. Am I okay with that? Absolutely, I'm okay with that. But is that what drives my business every single day? 100% not. My business is driven every single day. Every single day that revenue comes into my company is because I'm intentionally seeking out solution seekers and marketing to them and making sure that every single day my sales team has anywhere from 5 to 10 sales conversations and they're closing 33 or more % of those sales conversations. And that's what pays my bills every day. The other stuff I consider the cherry on top. It's a bonus. It's a good way to build brand. It's a good way for people to know I still exist, but that is not a revenue generator for me, or it's not the main revenue generator for me. And as long as I keep it in that context, I think everybody, if they have the time, the bandwidth, the desire, putting out good value out into the world is never a bad thing by any means.
Nicholas, we've been talking about marketing and how we should be looking at this, especially if we're looking for solution seekers. I appreciate you being here, sharing your wisdom. Is there anything else you want to leave this with, like how they get in touch with you or anything like that?
Well, so two things. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. Like one thing I think is where everybody needs to consider is who are your most valuable prospects out in the marketplace? And do you have a means to reach, communicate, and enroll those people? If you don't, you need to. There's just too much opportunity being left on the table. And what I will throw out here is I believe that your greatest opportunity today in new client acquisition for the growth of your business, the greatest opportunity doesn't lie in coming up with a better mousetrap. Oh, let's come up with a new marketing campaign or a new this or a new that to try and reach more of the same people we've been already having a difficulty reaching anyways. Your greatest opportunity comes in identifying that there is someone out there called a solution seeker and tailoring an opportunity towards them. So if growth is in your forecast, recognize that the opportunity comes not with a new mousetrap, but comes with a completely new process where you target a completely different prospect. On top of that, should you want to get in contact with me to talk about any of that? Yeah, here's the benefit, Gene, is that I'm the only Nicholas Kusmich in the world. So the good part is it's easy to find me. The bad part is if you don't know how to spell my name, it's really difficult to find me. So Nicholas Kusmich, but if you want to have a conversation about how we can help you, work with Nick. So workwithnic.com is a great way to do that. Secondly, if you're more of an so that's if you're a solution seeker and just said, Nick, let's have a conversation about how you can help us. If you're more of an information seeker, nicholaskusmich.co.ca CEO is an opportunity to enroll into my free newsletter that goes out every Thursday. It's all the best information that I have that I write every week. You get a free copy of my book as a result of doing that. You get plugged into my world. And then whenever you're ready, whenever that is, you can reach out to us through that means. So solution seekers, workwithnick.com, nic.com, information seekers, nicholaskusmich.co. Get enrolled into our free newsletter. We've got some great information that goes out regularly to help you there.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing this wisdom.
Yeah, no, I appreciate taking the time. It was great.
Wow, another fantastic interview. I love talking about marketing. It's just one of the things that I know a lot about, but I know enough to be dangerous, as they say. And the experts in the field are just world-class at what they do. Nicholas is one of those guys. He is absolutely world-class. And so I really appreciate him being on here. Hopefully you took notes. Hopefully you will have a better plan. Maybe you know some of the mistakes you're making, these marketing myths exposed. But I really look forward to you developing a strategy that works for you. Now, all that being said, when you think about leadership and think about growth Think Tank. Leave with courage. We'll see you next time.